attempt number 2, because I think yesterday I tried to take a lunch break and my phone started ringing 12 minutes after I started my live, 12 to 13 minutes after I started the live. Uh, Today, I think it's less likely, but it's not impossible. Less likely, but not impossible. Yesterday, I had to pick up because it was an important call, but generally, I try my best not to answer calls during my break because I need my break for my sanity. Transformation Tuesday. Everybody's week has gone well. I feel like I go through a week a day. Why am I the only one here? We're not here until it's not official until Ma puts that in my comment section. But yeah, I titled this that I'm not a calm or a patient person. And the funny thing about that is if you ask anybody in my life who the most calm and the most patient person that they know is, a lot of people would probably tell you me. You invented that, unfortunately, Lisa. Now everybody ran with it. They ran with your dusty slogan. Yeah, but a lot of people, whether that's clients, friends, family members, if you ask them who the most common patient person in their life is, they would likely say me, or a lot of them would say me, because people are always telling me how calm and patient that I am, and that's not the case. I mean, I do a great job of playing that person on TV, but that's not really who I am. I mean, I've worked on it. I've worked on it because that's the reason why people say that. But I have an anxiety disorder, and if anybody knows what it's like living with an anxiety disorder, you're not calm. Your body literally sends off signals for things that are not there, like the same kind of the fight or flight that everybody talks about. Like, I'm somebody who worries a lot. I'm somebody who stresses over things that I don't need to be so stressed over. I'm somebody who overthinks things. But the way how I appear calm in most scenarios is because I have lived a life of reacting to everything. And I think I kind of mentioned this in my live yesterday. I lived a life where I live out my first reaction, and it is never to my benefit. I remember this one time somebody was yelling at me, and they were upset that I wasn't yelling back. It's like, do you care about anything? And really, it wasn't that I didn't care, but it was just that I knew that what I had to say was probably going to be as bad or worse than whatever they had to say. And there wasn't going to be a good end result. So I was just intaking what they were saying. And also, I've started to learn that sometimes people really speak the truth when they get mad. I'm not like that. I mean, I just might say something a little bit spicier. But I'm never the person who was like, I was mad, so I didn't mean that. I don't say things that I don't mean. I'll beat him to it next time. That doesn't even make sense, Lisa. Because I put it in there before I started the live. No matter how many times I'm told to calm down, I physically can't. In fact, people telling me to calm down makes it worse sometimes. Yeah, I mean, you can't make somebody calm down. I don't think I've ever had somebody tell me, like, calm down, Mark, and I calm down. I do remember something that happened, though, at one of my jobs that was rather crazy, that I don't think I want to describe in detail because I always worry about the internet, but I'll put it this way. When I first started in the field of doing mental health work, I didn't realize the kind of experiences that I would have in the field. And I had this one experience with this client who made something up about me. And not like the type of thing that this other client I'm talking about, when I said that this person made stuff up about my work performance. That's one thing. I was upset about that, but that's one thing. This person made up wilder allegations against me. Much wilder. So I remember that particular person I had already reported once to my management before it even got to that point. And my management was like, oh, well, thanks for reporting it, but that's no big deal. That's just some, young person. You can deal with that, no problem. And then it got worse with that same person. They made crazy allegations against me. Fortunately, they weren't believed, but at the stage that I was in at that time, I was about 24, and it was my first experience working in the mental health field, and I had never worked with somebody who had delusions. So you're looking at them, and you're kind of taking everything they say at face value, but they have something else going on in their head. So I was mad as ever, and I went to go confront that person, and I said, did you say this and that? And I expected them to lie. I thought they would be like, no, what are you talking about, Mark? I didn't say that. They were like, yes, I did. And I was like, you were lying. Like that, that's not true. And that person was like, I do know it's not true. So my blood is boiling at that point. And then I said a couple more things, and then that person was like, I'm done with this conversation now, goodbye. Stood up while I was talking and turned around and started walking the other way. And I started walking towards them, and then one of my coworkers physically saw all this thing happen, like physically jumped out of their chair and like bear hugged me so that I wouldn't keep moving, and like kind of pulled me out of the room. That person was not really physically capable of pulling me out of the room, like not like lifted me up and pulled me out of the room, but just the fact that they bear hugged me like that, I was like, okay. And then they pulled me to the side and said, Mark, currently you're not in trouble. Nobody believes what that person said. You already reported it. The staff knows about it. And this person has been known to lie before. But you could find yourself in a world of trouble if you go any further in pursuing this conversation and something happens from that. So I just left the building and walked around. That walking outside has become a go-to thing for me when I get that mad. Like when I get really, really upset, if I'm able to, I will just get outside and take a couple of laps around my block. And normally by the time I get back to my house, I feel good enough. Like if I'm at a 10 out of 10 anger, those couple of laps, when I'm done, I'll be at a 7 out of 10. And if I'm at a 7 or below, it's good enough for me to think well enough not to say things or do things that will jeopardize myself. My husband is what is the quiet archetype? I don't know what that is. I've never heard that in my life. You mean he argues with a low voice? Like he doesn't raise his tone? Is that what you mean? You're not in trouble. You know what? I hate those conversations where like, I have to talk to you about something. Don't worry, you're not in trouble. Yeah, I will stress over that. If that's what you mean. But if not, that's just a thing that I would be I would be thinking about all day. Or I hate when people say, oh, it's something I need to talk to you about later on. Like, no, please just talk to me about it now. That's a good thing to learn about yourself. Therapy. I say this all the time, that there's a lot of things that I learned in therapy. I think you were on the live where I described that scenario I had with this one friend, the first person I had ever shared with outside of my family that I had a mental health disorder. And at the time when I shared that thing, everything was cool. I was so happy that I did it. They told me, like, you're so brave for sharing that. I really appreciate the fact that you shared that, and it makes me feel like you're such a strong person, blah, blah, blah. We had a really nice conversation around that, and it was so meaningful. And then we got into this argument. The argument was because I said something to them in confidence, and then they repeated it to the person that it was about. And then that person came to me and was like, keep my name out your mouth, basically. And then referenced the specific thing that was said in that conversation. So I was mad for two reasons. The first one was because it was something that shouldn't have been repeated. But the second reason was because the conversation was about that person who was mad, but I didn't start the conversation. It was because of an issue my friend had with that person. They were talking to me about their issue with that person. And I was just kind of jumping in as their friend. So they included the things that I said and not the things that they said. So I was furious. I went to confront them, and I was like, why would you say this? Why would you tell this person this thing? And then the answer was, I don't know. The answer was basically like, calm down. It's not that big of a deal. And I was like, yes, it is a big deal. You're breaking my trust, and I'm very upset about this. And then at that point, I was probably at like a 5 or a 6. I wasn't at a 10 until they said, are you feeling okay? Did you take your bipolar meds? Then I was at a 12. So I was angry. I can't even recall what I said. I just know that I was angry. And I said things that I wished that I hadn't said. And then I remember I had my therapy appointment the next day. So I spoke to my therapist. And at that time, I think I didn't have too good of a grasp of what mental illness was. And I was like, did my mental illness make me say all those things to that person? And the therapist told me, describe the scenario. I described it. I said what I said, and I said what they said. And my therapist was like, with a mental illness or without a mental illness, the thing that person said to you was offensive. They were in the wrong, and then they doubled down on it by saying something offensive on top of that. So I would be mad too. So she told me, don't get in the habit of thinking that everything that you do or every negative action that you make is because of mental illness. You were angry. You were angry, and you had a right to be angry. You had a reason to be angry. But she said, because of who I've known you to be since you've been here and since we've been speaking, I know that you would have liked to react differently and to express yourself better. I was like, yeah, absolutely. So she's the one who gave me some suggestions. She said, if you ever get into a situation where you feel like you've reached a boiling point, what is something that calms you down when you're at a boiling point? And I was thinking of different things. I was like, exercise, probably. I said listening to music, maybe decompressing with a friend. And she said, yeah, so that's your toolkit. So she said, the next time you find yourself in a situation where you're at a boiling point, to the point where you can't think straight, and everything that you're thinking, you just want to let it out and say, if you can, find a way to literally exit the room or exit the building. And she said, if it's somebody that you live with, if it's a situation that's happening at your house or something, or if it's something that's happening at your workplace and you're not able to actually physically just get up and be completely away, just find a way to tell the person, like, respectfully, can we please continue this conversation later? I'm not trying to avoid the conversation. I just can't talk to you right now because it's basically it's not going to go well. And that's something that I have used for years now, because that thing that I'm talking about happened in around 2015. So it's not 100% of the time, obviously, because being human, you can't avoid going off for the rest of your life. But I would say in 9 out of every 10 times that I feel that way, it works. I even remember a time that I used it a few years ago at my last job when I was going through that horrible thing with the HR manager. Oh,